It's still hot as HE double hockey sticks in Alabama right now. End of October. It's fine. It's fine. Just ready for fall, but I'm mostly ready for Christmas. If you can relate, I don't really know what to tell you to do. So I found this dresser at a thrift store for only like, I want to say it was like $80. I'd have to go back and look. I think I have some video footage of it, so I'll pop it on the screen if I was wrong. But it is a Dixie campaigner dresser. The hardware, the lines, the structure, I absolutely love it, but I do think that it needs an update. I'm definitely planning to keep this hardware and clean it up using a tried and true method that I'll show you later in the video. This dresser has some damage that I'll have to repair, but the bones are good and I'm excited to freshen this piece up. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's go. The first step of any furniture flip is to remove the hardware. I already mentioned a minute ago, but I'm definitely keeping this hardware. It's super cool, and I really have no idea, even if I wanted to, how I would fill like these huge gaps where the hardware fits in this dresser. So I'm going to clean these up later on in the video using my tried and true hardware suit method. So stick around for that part. I removed the hardware just using a screwdriver, and then I had to remove these little accent pieces using a little razor blade and a screwdriver to kind of pry it off. And I'm going to clean these as well with my hardware. Right now they're super dingy and dusty, but it's gonna look really good once they're cleaned up. Next up, I clean this dresser. It's really important to clean before you paint. There's a ton of reasons why, but mostly because you want your paint to stick to your piece. If there's any dirt or furniture polish or anything, your paint's gonna have a hard time adhering. And so I always clean with warm water and soap, and then I'll rinse the remaining soap residue off with just some warm, clean water. I always clean the inside of my dresser as well as the outside because the inside is super dusty most of the time, and I don't want to leave that dirt and grime on the inside of the dresser because at the end of the day I am trying to flip this dresser for a profit. And if I were to buy a dresser off Facebook Marketplace or from someone that flips furniture, I would really want the inside of that dresser to be clean as well as the outside. Next up, I'm filling in any imperfections that I don't think I'll be able to smooth out with my sander later on. There are plenty of chunks of missing veneer on this dresser that I'm going to have to fill in. For this particular part, I put a piece of tape on the back of the dresser to give it a smooth surface to be able to put in the wood filler. There were several pieces of missing veneer that I filled in as well with wood filler. I'll let this dry and I'll come back in a little bit and sand it smooth. In some cases, I may need to fill in a little bit more wood filler in certain areas because this stuff does shrink as it dries. While I'm waiting for the wood filler to dry, I'm going to go ahead and set up my spray tent here. As I mentioned before, it is super hot in Alabama, even though that's literally the end of October when I'm filming this. So I like to spray my pieces in the shade of my garage until it cools down a little bit. And this spray tent, shelter, whatever you want to call it, saves my garage from all the overspray from my paint sprayer. Whew. So we're about to do a little scuff sand of this dresser behind me. It basically just smooths out a lot of the imperfections in the finish, gives the paint and primer some teeth to kind of grip onto. So I have my Surfprep sander here. I ran out of the pads that actually go with this sander, so I'm just kind of making do right now. Let's get to it. I'm using my Surfprep sander here to smooth out any imperfections in the wood, kind of like I explained before. A Surfprep sander is a pretty expensive sander, especially if you're just starting out, so don't feel like you have to go out and buy this. You can definitely just use a normal one that you get from a hardware store. But this, what I really love about it is that it has this vacuum attachment that can vacuum all of the dust and particles into my shop vac, which really saves me from having to clean up and makes my sanding process a lot easier. All right, we've scuff sanded, we filled in all the imperfections with wood filler, we've cleaned, we've wiped away the dust, we've done just about everything, and as far as prep work goes. And now we are ready to prime. I'm going to be using Kiehl's Restoration Primer and my HomeRight Finish Max sprayer. It's one of the cheaper HomeRight sprayers, and I really just use it for my primer, so I can use the more expensive one that I have, which is the Super Finish Max sprayer, I think, for my actual paint. So we're about to prime this piece behind me. I'm using Kiehl's Restoration Primer for this piece and my Finish Max sprayer. I recently made the switch to using this primer a lot more. I used to use a shellac-based primer, but that has gotten so crazy expensive, so this is a really good alternative. And the best part about it is that it's water-based, so I can spray it through my sprayer, which makes the priming process a lot easier and faster just in general, because I can clean it out of my sprayer given that it's a water-based formula. Just because it's water-based doesn't mean that it's not a great product, and I like it almost as much as the shellac-based primer that I used to use. And just a note, you don't have to thin out this primer. I think that it actually kind of messes with the formula if you thin it out. So just spray it through your sprayer as is. You may have to turn the flow rate up a little bit more than you would normally, but it's worth it, trust me. I'm spraying 2 coats of this primer. I'm going to let it dry about an hour between coats, and I'll sand it smooth between coats, and then I'll sand it before I spray my actual paint, just to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then sometimes there's some imperfections that can kind of peek out through the primer that I don't normally see unless there's like bright white paint on. So there is a possibility that I'll have to fill in a couple of areas with wood filler. The first coat of primer, I do this a lot, don't I? The first coat of primer is done on this dresser. I'm going to let it dry. I do see a couple little spots that I want to touch up with some wood filler, and then I'll do my second coat of primer, and then we'll officially decide on a paint color. This is my second coat of primer going on. I'll normally spray the first coat vertical and then I'll spray the second coat horizontal just to make sure that I get good coverage in all the different nooks and crannies. I'll do this same thing later on with paint, but as you might have noticed, I spray with all the drawers in. It saves me time from having to tape the drawers around with paper, and it saves the inside of the drawers in the dresser from getting any overspray. So I'll come back with a paintbrush and primer to get those areas that I wasn't able to reach with my sprayer. It's officially the next day. This piece is primed and prepped and ready to go for its first coat of paint. I'm going to be using Behr's Alkyd Enamel Paint in the color Cotton Knit. I'm actually using this on another project that I'm going to be... These dogs. I'm actually using this paint on another project that I'll be posting on YouTube soon. So I already have a load in my gun. So let's just kill two birds with one stone and go ahead and paint this piece in the same color. So when I first open the can of paint, I'll stir it really well. I'll normally buy this paint by the gallon because I use it so often just on so many different projects. And I forgot to mention that I do this same thing with the primer as well. You always want to make sure that you strain your paint through a paint strainer when you load it into your paint gun, because if you don't do that, then all the little dried bits or anything that might be in your paint could clog your sprayer and mess up your finish, and you definitely don't want that after all this work that we put in. So I just buy these little strainers off Amazon, buy like 100 pack, because I use it so often and they are relatively cheap, so it's definitely a good investment. I'm using the color Cotton Knit. It's a Behr color in their Alkyd Enamel Paint in the satin sheen. This is my go-to neutral paint color. I think it goes with a lot of different homes and styles, so I really love this paint. It's not too white, but it's not too cream. It's like a good mix in between. It actually cooled down this next day, so I brought my dresser outside to spray it and enjoy the nice weather outside while I was working on this dresser. This paint, when you're first spraying this paint, it will look almost like an orange peely texture, but the more that it dries, it'll really level out and be a nice smooth finish. So don't worry if you first start spraying it. Don't freak out. Promise it'll look good. I've also gotten a couple of questions. No, I do not thin this paint. It is recommended by the manufacturer to not thin this paint with water like you would like a thick chalk paint. This paint actually is pretty thick, but I would follow the directions. Definitely don't thin it out. You'll just have to turn your flow rate on your sprayer up, probably close to the max level. I would just practice a lot on like a piece of cardboard or paper before you spray it on your piece to make sure you have the right flow rate. This paint will be dry to the touch in about 2 hours and will be ready for the next coat of paint in about 4 to 6 hours. So it'll be later on this afternoon before I can spray the second coat. Here's my dresser after spraying the first coat of paint. We'll come back, like I said, in about 4 to 6 hours. And while we're waiting on it to dry, we're going to work on cleaning up the hardware. I'm definitely planning to reuse this hardware for this piece. Super cool. I like to call this my hardware soup. I have a certain pot in the house that I use only for this. We don't cook any food in this pot. I have it labeled and well, okay, never mind. This is actually a new hardware soup pot, but we don't use any food in this. So that's a major point. I kind of feel like I'm doing a cooking show right now, but I'm going to dump all this hardware in here. All you really need, water, pot, and distilled white vinegar. Your house is going to smell absolutely atrocious. Just lean into it, okay? I mean, your eyes are gonna be watering. It's gonna be smelling really bad. Get you some candles and Febreze, okay? The recipe is 1 part vinegar to 1 part water. I'm probably just gonna use, I'm just gonna dump the rest of this vinegar in the pot and then fill it up with some water. We are going to get ready to put it to a boil now. We're gonna let that boil for like 10 minutes. And then we need some Barkeeper's Friend and some extra fine steel wool. We're gonna scrub them down really good. Can't wait to show you how they're gonna look after, because it is an amazing transformation. This is like my favorite thing to do. It's so pleasing to the eye, honestly. Just like watching it, scrubbing it. I love it. Oh, this makes me sneeze every time. I don't know what it is. This makes me feel like a mad scientist every time. It doesn't look like much yet, but just wait. It's gonna be so good. Spray some Febreze. It's bad. Got my Barkeeper's Friend here. I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes and then I'm gonna come back with some steel wool. Look at that comparison. It's wild. So this is actually the next day. I ended up getting really distracted with some other projects and kind of slacked off on this one for the day, but I'm spraying my second coat here. The paint is nice and dry since I let it dry overnight, and I'm spraying everything kind of like I mentioned before, horizontal this time because I sprayed the first coat vertical just so I can make sure that I didn't miss any parts. I let that second coat dry for a few hours and now I'm back painting the parts of the drawers that I couldn't reach with my sprayer. After I've made sure that my paint has dried really well, I'm adding my new super shiny hardware back to the piece. Look how good that looks. I'm adding these little accent pieces back as well. I think it really adds to the character of this piece. I lost a couple of these small little nails in the process of this project, so I'm going to have to run to the hardware store in the next day or so to get some more of these little nails so I can officially list this for sale. Adding the hardware and all these accents back is honestly my favorite part of this project. I just think that it really kind of pulls everything together of kind of the look and style that I was going for, and it's really exciting to get to see everything come together as one because it looks so good. And with that, I'm officially done with this dresser. Just a reminder, this was the before. The hardware was dingy and dirty. This piece in general was dingy and dirty. There was a bunch of missing veneer and issues with the finish. And this is the after. I think I really updated this piece, made it a lot more modern and a lot more desirable for the modern home. I'm excited to get this listed on Facebook Marketplace, and if you want to find out how much I ended up selling this dresser for and for all the behind the scenes, make sure to follow me on Instagram or TikTok at LaurenBerryMac and subscribe to my channel because I'll be posting new content every week. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I hope to see you back here soon.